Welcome to Fascist Economics 101.
I'm really glad to have you here. The last couple weeks have been crazy, so let's take a breather and just talk about economics for a bit. The previous episodes have been about economic and political theory. For this episode, I'd like to talk about some items in recent news. In the news we're covering today, the Trump administration has used fear to advance fascist goals, and the wrath of the Trump administration is not to be taken lightly. Every time ICE raids a workplace or Trump announces a new tariff, companies get nervous and increasingly eager to comply with the Trump administration. This trend recently boiled over in a massive Homeland Security raid on a factory owned by Hyundai, the South Korean car company. So, let's get into what happened with Hyundai. For context, ICE is part of the Department of Homeland Security. On September 4th, Homeland Security arrested 475 workers at a Hyundai plant in Elabel, Georgia, close to Savannah. According to the South Korean government, over 300 of those arrested were South Korean nationals. South Korea negotiated with the Trump administration, and the Koreans who were arrested have since returned to Korea. The search warrant only specified 4 individuals who the government was looking for, but 500 local, state, and federal law enforcement members arrived. Listen, when 500 law enforcement officers show up, they're not looking for 4 people. It seems like the operation was always meant to be a broader sweep, never mind the 4-person search warrant. And it was a dramatic raid. Some of the workers hid in the air vents to evade arrest. Some of them tried to escape through a sewage pond, and authorities had to fish them out in a boat. The workers in the pond tried to capsize the boat, but that didn't work and they got arrested anyways. Although Hyundai's Elabel plant has produced some vehicles, it was not yet fully operational. It was in a preparatory stage, where South Korean contractors were busy installing and testing machinery. American workers were intended to take up the plant's operations later on. Hyundai hoped that by establishing a plant here in the U.S., products manufactured there would not be subject to Trump's tariffs. The White House is alleging that all of those detained were committing some sort of crime, and they're citing a few individual cases where workers may have come across a border illegally or worked on an inappropriate visa, but it's hard to believe that more than 300 South Korean technicians spontaneously decided to work here illegally. The available reporting makes it hard to know what the fundamental legal issue was for the vast majority of those who were arrested. It's possible that Hyundai's contractor had its workers in the U.S. using an inappropriate type of visa. In other words, maybe they got authorization to come to the U.S. to do one type of work but did a different type of work or something along those lines. The Trump administration has made it exceptionally difficult for foreign companies to get work visas for their technicians to come into the U.S., so for all we know, one of Hyundai's contractors may have knowingly or unknowingly skirted some of the rules. Now, there's obviously an immense amount of hypocrisy around how the Department of Homeland Security's new funding was supposed to be used. We were promised mass arrests of Mexican drug cartel members, and instead ICE and Homeland Security are rounding up South Korean engineers, not one of whom has been accused of any kind of violent crime. But more important than that is the fear that this raid spreads. This was the U.S. government massively interrupting a company's operations. Whether Hyundai's contractor was intentionally circumventing the law or whether this was an honest mistake, a screw-up with the American work visas has cost Hyundai a major factory. That's all that Hyundai was trying to do here. But now, Hyundai and the South Korean government have had to fly their people home, and it was recently announced that the plant will not open after all. This plant was part of Hyundai's $12.6 billion investment into Georgia, the largest single investment in the state's history, and was planned to create 8,500 jobs at the plant itself by 2031, plus up to 40,000 additional direct and indirect jobs in Georgia, too. And all of this was part of Hyundai's broader $21 billion investment in the US. So now all this money and all these jobs and all these opportunities are going up in smoke. And by the way, all this is just Hyundai. Hyundai is a South Korean company, and South Korea is a big investor in the US. On August 26th, not even a month ago, a summit between the American and South Korean presidents resulted in an informal agreement for South Korean companies to invest $150 billion in the US and for the South Korean government to steer $350 billion of investment funds our way too. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Asian countries invested $1,081 billion into our economy in 2024, so the amounts that South Korea is pledging are really substantial. That magnitude of money can do a lot of good, letting U.S. banks make more loans to American families and businesses. But now, all that is in jeopardy. After all, how do you think South Korea feels now that we jailed 300 of its workers and prevented the construction of a major manufacturing plant? Those workers have returned home to Korea, but while this crisis was going on, the New York Times reported that the chief of staff to the South Korean president said in a meeting of senior government officials, "We will not let our guard down until we have our people safely back home." For the record, South Korea doesn't talk like this about the US, ever. So what does it mean, "we will not let our guard down"? It means that they don't trust us anymore. Folks, the world is not blind to what is happening here. Our soft power has evaporated. We can expect South Korean companies to no longer feel safe operating in the US and to pull their investments. And we'll see how long it takes for other countries to do the same. I want to be clear, this raid was intentional. The White House is throwing its weight around, showing that the government is now a major factor that companies have to consider when it comes to those companies winning or losing. That is a cornerstone of how fascist economics works, as we saw in the framework episode. For the next episode, we're going to look at how companies respond to this climate of fear with a look at fascist signaling. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, please subscribe, and please share this with anyone who might be interested in understanding these seemingly nonsensical actions. See you next time.